Welcome to the channel and welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Loads going through. Ekitike and Mbeumo, Gyokeres, Onana staying. Loads to go through. So let's jump straight into it. Let's kick off with the striker situation. So Manchester United want to sign Hugo Ekitike regardless of Matheus Cunha, as they are still looking for a proper number 9. No agreements or decision yet. Club-to-club talks between United and Eintracht Frankfurt began last week. So that came from Florian Plettenberg, who is good when it comes to specifically German news and German transfers. Sport Bild, though, who are again decent when it comes to German players, said that Hugo Ekitike is open to joining Manchester United. His brother is in contact with United officials. United are also the only club who have contacted Frankfurt. Frankfurt's sporting director is also friends with Manchester United's Christopher Vivell. So that's interesting. So according to Sport Bild, United are in contact with his agent, which is his brother, but also are the only club to have contacted Frankfurt. And imagine they'd said, we want him for less than £85 million than what you're asking for. Interestingly, though, Florian Plettenberg's also confirmed that story, saying that Manchester United have made contact with the management of Hugo Ekitike over the weekend and have expressed concrete interest. Man United are now in contact with Eintracht Frankfurt and Ekitike. No decision has been made yet. Liverpool and Chelsea are still in the race. So it looks like, according to these reports of Sport Bild and Florian Plettenberg, that United is now speaking to Hugo Ekitike's agent, his brother, and have also started conversations with Eintracht Frankfurt as well, expressing their interest. However, the problem with Ekitike is £85 million is the asking price currently. Even if you negotiate it down, if Liverpool and Chelsea are still in the race, that's just going to negotiate the price back up, surely, if there's a bidding war, unless the same thing happens with Bryan Mbeumo is what's happening, which is where if Ekitike says, no, I don't want to come to the other clubs, and it ends up being a one-horse race, then potentially we could negotiate that salary, the fee down for Ekitike. But there's a lot of moving parts in that, So it's at the early stage where we're making contact, so we'll need to wait and see how that plays out. But give us your thoughts. Looks like, potentially we're either pivoting towards Ekitike because he's the one we're going for, or this might be gamesmanship because of Gyokeres, and I'm going to go through the Gyokeres stories in a second. So it might just be United going, so okay, well, fine, we're going to go to Ekitike to force Gyokeres to make a decision, or maybe U-turn on his decision to want to come to United behind Arsenal. Who knows? Could be something like that. Interestingly, though, Florian Plettenberg also said that my favourite club as a child was Manchester United. I've always admired them. So that was Hugo Ekitike, told RTL in December 2024. Man United are so far the only club to have made direct contact with Eintracht Frankfurt. Liverpool and Chelsea have up to now only held concrete talks with the players' management. So United seem to be a little bit ahead now in their efforts to try to get Hugo Ekitike, if nothing else materialises, because I still think we're potentially in for Gyokeres. But if Gyokeres does go to Arsenal, then we obviously need to look at another alternative, and it seems at the moment Ekitike might be the alternative that we're pivoting towards, but we'll keep an eye on it. Give us your thoughts on that in the comments. I mean, what do you think about Ekitike, though? Do you think he's the right choice to pivot to? I still have concerns. Massive amount of money for a relatively unproven 22-year-old striker, but statistically very, very eye-catching in terms of his data and his stats, apart from, blocks is a little bit low, but he's a striker. Good interceptions as well, which means he works hard up front as well. You can't argue with his stats and his data. He does look really impressive. 48 appearances, 22 goals, 12 assists for Frankfurt. I just worry about paying a massive amount of money for a player from the Bundesliga, because we have been there before and we've got the history of it not working out. And I really worry, if you could get Ekitike for a lot less than £85 million, then I would be for it. But that amount of money for a young, unproven player, I have concerns about that personally. But give us your thoughts on on Ekitike in the comments. It'll be interesting to read what you think about the situation later. And then the latest on it is that Graham Bailey's come out saying that Manchester United have spoken to Hugo Ekitike's representatives. However, he is one of the options being considered by United, and unless Eintracht Frankfurt drop their price, things will not progress. So I agree. I don't think we should be paying £85 million for Hugo Ekitike. As talented as he is, and as promising as he appears, and his stats suggest that he is a very good player, good goal scoring record for somebody of that age as well. You can't deny all of that, but unproven, first breakout season, a massive amount of money, and we've been down that road before and it hasn't exactly worked out well for us. So that skepticism in me is why I wouldn't be paying £85 million for Ekitike. I like the player. If you could get the price a lot lower than that, then brilliant. But are Frankfurt going to want to do that? And then if we do get the price lowered, are Chelsea not going to swoop in, or Liverpool not going to swoop in, and then it becomes a bidding war and the price is going to go up eventually anyway? Who knows? We'll keep an eye on it for you. It's definitely a player of interest. There's no smoke without fire. Whether we're, as I mentioned, though, whether we're pivoting towards Ekitike because of the Gyokeres situation, or whether we're doing it as a negotiation tactic to either Sporting or Gyokeres, only time will tell. Only time will tell. But we'll go through the latest on Gyokeres. So this is the story that I brought you at the end of yesterday's video from Record. So just to kind of catch up where we are with Gyokeres is he's come out now effectively saying he would prefer to go to Arsenal ahead of United, and that's why we're maybe pivoting towards Ekitike. Record, though, we're saying that Arsenal have got fed up with Sporting's demands, and Gyokeres is no longer their first choice because he was too expensive. Sporting is asking for €80 million, and Arsenal have turned back to Sesko again. So Record from Portugal, who you do need to take with a pinch of salt, even though they were right about the Arsenal, or Gyokeres preferring Arsenal over United, they were wrong about them making bids and bids were being rejected because, to my knowledge, Arsenal haven't actually made an official bid. So we do need to take them with a pinch of salt, but they're suggesting that Arsenal are pivoting more back towards Sesko than Gyokeres, even though Gyokeres has come out saying that he prefers Arsenal, so now Arsenal might not be getting him. And somebody's going to end up with pie on their face, aren't they? I think somebody's either the agent or Arsenal. Maybe United have played a blinder. Maybe United have put the story out to, to call Arsenal's bluff, and now Arsenal be like, oh no, actually no, we don't want him, and then it gives us a free run at Gyokeres. Who knows? We'll need to see how it develops. Manchester United is still keen on Victor Gyokeres, calling to understand what happens till the very end. They respect him prioritising Arsenal due to Champions League football, but are still there. Gyokeres didn't say no to Man United. He didn't tell them he wouldn't join United are still in the picture. Man United remain cautious and are closely monitoring the situation. So Fabrizio Romano clarifying that, United are still there. If the move to Arsenal doesn't materialise, then maybe we would still go in for Gyokeres, and maybe Gyokeres would still want to come in that scenario. Apparently the club are okay with his decision to do that. So whether this is still a viable option or not, I think so. Going off of Romano, I think this could still happen, depending on Arsenal and their situation. If they do pivot towards Sesko, then maybe we do go in for Gyokeres. But in the meantime, if we don't, because his preference is Arsenal, we're then maybe looking at Hugo Ekitike. That could be the way things have been playing out. Could all be made up. Could all be agent talk. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Wait and see what happens. Personally, I would feel, I think the fact that he's publicly, or whether he's done it willingly himself or his agent, or it's just been leaked out through the media, who knows? But the fact he has publicly come out and said, no, actually I prefer to go to Arsenal, doesn't feel right with me. But he won't be the first player that's wanted to go somewhere else and ended up coming to United. He won't be the last player neither as well. And if he ends up coming in, I personally don't like it, but I would accept it, and we would have to deal with it and move on. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, and apparently United are cool with it. So, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But give us your thoughts. Would you be okay with us still going for Gyokeres now that everything's played out, or would you still be against it? Give us your shouts in the comments. Be interesting to read what you feel about the situation later. Now let's go through the latest on Bryan Mbeumo. So Manchester United remain confident of finalising a deal for Bryan Mbeumo despite interest from Tottenham. And Mbeumo has told Confidence he only wants to join Man United. So that's Samuel Lucas, who is a shit stirrer but is well connected, suggesting the same thing. The interest from Tottenham is genuine, but he still wants to come to United. It's just if we don't make a deal, or we can't do a deal with Brentford, then it is concerning. The longer this drags on, the more concerned I get regarding it. Samuel Lucas also said, though Tottenham are going hard for Bryan Mbeumo and are potentially prepared to offer him a higher salary, Manchester United is still regarded as the front runners on account of the player's wish to join the club. So Samuel Lucas say that Tottenham are actually pushing quite hard by the sounds of things to get Mbeumo, but he still wants to come to United. It's just, are we going to get this deal done with Brentford? Because it seems like nothing's really happened in terms of the negotiations. We've not really heard much around what's going on, what stage we're at. We know we're in negotiations and we're preparing a second bid, but we've been preparing a second bid for a week now. So it is alarming. The longer this drags on, can we just get the deal done, please? Especially with everything that's going on with the rest of the targets that we seem to be missing out on. Can we please just get this one over the line? Because that would be, that would be great. And then Peter Hall said that Tottenham signing Tell on a permanent basis is understood to have been accelerated after Tottenham learned that Bryan Mbeumo, who the club inquired about this week, still sees Manchester United as his preferred destination. So all the latest on Mbeumo is there's still no discussions or updates on the price and the actual negotiations. Not heard anything regarding anything there, but that Mbeumo still wants to come, but Tottenham are interested, and the longer it drags on, the more concerned I get about it. But the belief is that he still wants to come, and as long as that is the case, as long as we're still in negotiations, we've got to assume that this deal hopefully will go through. It's just dragging on, isn't it? And it's dragging its heels, but hopefully we get some updates on it soon, especially now the transfer window is officially opened back up again today. But give us your thoughts on Mbeumo in the comments. Okay, let's go through the rest of the transfer news. So another striker we've been linked with, another daily Osimhen story for you. So Victor Osimhen's priority is to play Champions League football next season. Manchester United and AC Milan are not seen as front runners. Now that came from Rudy Galletti and Valentin Furlan, decent sources, suggesting that Osimhen's priority is Champions League football. So that could be another player that we miss out on if we were ever in for him anyway, because I'm still not entirely convinced about Victor Osimhen, because David Ornstein came out a while ago and said United are not interested in Osimhen because of the wages. But we're linked with him constantly, so that's why I'm bringing you the daily Osimhen updates, suggesting that Osimhen would be another striker that wouldn't want to come because of Champions League football, along with Liam Delap and potentially Gyokeres, depending on what Arsenal decide to do. But it is what it is. However, Fabrizio Romano has said that the race for Victor Osimhen is still on. Al Hilal want to submit a new offer. Meanwhile, Premier League clubs Galatasaray and Juventus are still interested. Now, there was a report the other day saying that there were 8 teams still in the mix or still having a conversation with Osimhen. United were named as one of those clubs, as well as Galatasaray, Juventus. Al Hilal, interestingly, might come back in with a new bid for Osimhen. Who knows how much wages they'll offer him this time, although it might not be about the wages for Osimhen. He's one of the best strikers in the world and wants to be rewarded for that, or be at least on par with the other strikers in the world. And if you look at the list of strikers, like Erling Haaland was one of the most well-paid strikers, Harry Kane, all the top elite level strikers are all on good money. So, you can't blame one of the best strikers in the world wanting rewarding for that, or wanting something around what players on his level are getting across the globe. So it is what it is, though. I just don't think Ineos are prepared to break their wage structure to the amount that Osimhen would require at this stage, when we're trying to reduce the wage bill from the mistakes in the past and free up some cash so we can actually rebuild the squad. I can't see it personally. I would love it. Osimhen would be a fantastic player to bring in, don't get me wrong. It's just, it's the wages that are the sticking point. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments. Obviously, if we bring in a striker, what happens with our current one? So Inter Milan are now accelerating a deal for Rasmus Højlund after he accepted their proposal. So more reports coming from Corriere dello Sport suggesting that Inter Milan are accelerating a deal for Rasmus Højlund after he accepted their proposal. So that's really interesting and definitely worth keeping an eye on, because obviously there is no smoke without fire regarding Rasmus Højlund, and and all the noise seems to be regarding Inter. And if, according to that report, if he's accepted their bid, could be one to pay attention to, going forward. But we'll keep an eye on it for you and see how that plays out. I don't know if we would I do think we would look to sell Højlund, but whether we'd do it before we bring in a striker or whether it'll be simultaneous. So once we get a striker further down the line, or once the deal's effectively close, then maybe we'll see a bit more movement on Højlund, because I think we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot if you sell Højlund, because teams know we're desperate for a striker anyway. If you sell Højlund now, they know we're going to be even more desperate, and it just inflates the price and weakens our bargaining position as well, I think. So I think you might see a simultaneous thing regarding that. So and the other strikers, Joshua Zirkzee. So Manchester United have decided to keep hold of Joshua Zirkzee. There was interest from a couple Serie A clubs, but United do not want to sell. So that again came from Corriere dello Sport, saying that potentially Højlund might be going to Inter. That's been widely documented. We're aware of that anyway, but also that Zirkzee's going to stay, and I'm happy with that. I'd be happy with both of those, being honest. But yeah, give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Are you happy to keep Zirkzee, and would you be happy to sell Højlund? Give us your shouts on that below. Now, another player that's loads of conflicting stories regarding Onana. Is he staying? Is he going? The latest on that, so Rich Fay said that André Onana wants to stay at Man United this summer, but Ruben Amorim wants 2 new goalkeepers. The realistic scenario is United want a new number 2. So that's interesting from Rich Fay. I've been saying that before in a video where, it's a way to force Onana out would be if you get a top quality number 2. Like say you sell Bayinda and you get Martinez in, that might then change Onana's decision. Then you can use Onana's money to go and strengthen in other areas and get in a number 2. I wouldn't be dead against United looking to do that. But according to Rich Fay, Onana wants to stay, and it's looking more likely maybe Bayinda goes and we get a younger goalkeeper to come in, or a number 2 goalkeeper, or somebody that can push Onana at least anyway. And then Samuel Lucker said a similar thing, that André Onana is expected to stay at Manchester United. Ruben Amorim enjoys a warm working relationship with him. So need to keep an eye on what's going on regarding Onana, because he did an interview the other day where he replied about his future, and he said, I don't know, we'll see. So it wasn't a convincing, yes, I'm definitely going to stay, but we'll keep an eye on it for you. Now, in terms of other exits, so Antony, this is an interesting one. This came from Matteo, who's a good source, saying that Real Betis are growing optimistic that they can secure Antony again this summer after meeting with Manchester United in England. Both parties acknowledge that it may take a few weeks to finalise a deal. Now, they're on about doing some sort of part co-ownership with Antony. I don't understand the full detail. So Real Betis have proposed a co-ownership deal for Antony. They're offering around 20 million euros and want Manchester United to retain a high percentage of any future sales, likely 50% of the transfer fees. So, it's some sort of deal where we do a loan with an obligation to buy, but then we'll still own 50% of Antony. So he'll be sold next season if he does well at Real Betis. And I know Atletico Madrid come in for him, for example, we would get 50% of the sell-on fee as well. I don't really understand the workings of the deal. All I would care about is as long as we don't lose money and Antony goes and we save the wages and it's a permanent deal, or it helps us from a PSR perspective, I don't care. That's all I'm worried about. How that deal gets done, no idea, no clue. As long as it gets done and it's helpful for us and it doesn't hinder us from a PSR perspective, that's all I'm really bothered about there. But I'm looking, more plausible that maybe Real Betis have come up with this wizardry, a way around that they can afford Antony to get him gone so that we can all move on with our lives. But we'll bring you any updates on that one as well, but give us your shouts in the comments. And then the next player is Garnacho. So Alejandro Garnacho's priority is to stay in Premier League while he is set to leave Man United this summer, despite Bayern Leverkusen's interest and Ten Hag's appreciation. The deal looks complicated and Premier League is the player's first choice. So Romano, again, doubling down on that. Garnacho's priority is the Premier League, and going to Bayern Leverkusen, despite the appreciation, is looking unlikely. And interestingly, Simon Jones from the Mail said a similar thing, that Alejandro Garnacho has a £70 million price tag and is unlikely to leave cheaply. Tottenham, Chelsea and Aston Villa are all showing interest as he prioritises a Premier League stay. So £70 million, more interest from Premier League clubs. Tottenham, Aston Villa. I've heard Newcastle might be potentially interested as well. But yeah, the more people we get lined up, the more of a bidding war we can get, and the more money we get, because that just helps us from a PSR perspective. We could fund the rest of the transfer window with the sale of Garnacho, so hopefully we can see some movement on that soon. In terms of the reason why maybe Leverkusen or maybe Premier League. So Garnacho is intentionally pushing away clubs abroad with unrealistic demands, wants to stay in the Premier League. Leverkusen stepped away for this reason. They have sufficient funds to move for him. They don't want to break their wage structure for him. So the Muppeteers suggesting similar thing, that he wants to stay in the Premier League, but he's pushing away other clubs because of his unrealistic wage demands as well, which is really interesting. Now, I'm just going to double check some breaking news because my phone has been going absolutely off. It is happening in the world of Man United. So Manchester United have held initial talks with Eintracht Frankfurt over the signing of Hugo Ekitike. United are exploring the conditions of a deal. Personal terms are not expected to be a problem, and the player could be open to a move. So that's came out literally at the time of recording this video from Sky Sports. Sky Sports, Seth, who's a good source. United held initial talks with Frankfurt about signing Hugo Ekitike. Personal terms won't be an issue. The player could be open to a move. So that's one to pay attention to and keep an eye on if Sky are now coming out saying the same thing that I brought you at the start of the video, confirming the stories basically from Florian Plettenberg and from Build, saying that we're potentially in contact with Ekitike. He'd be open to a move, and we've started talking with initial talks with Frankfurt. But again, I think Ekitike would be a good sign-in, just depending on the fee and the price. And there is risk. There's more concerns with Ekitike around his age and adaptability to the Premier League and stuff. That's why it's a risk to pay that sort of money for him. But we've just got to hope that people at the club have done their jobs and done their due diligence, unlike the previous regimes under Arnold and Murta, where they were throwing all this cash around for young players. Because, you know, I just like to hope that Christopher Vivell and Jason Wilcox and the new data team they've got in, Ruben Amorim, have actually know what they're on about when it comes to transfers. So we need to wait and see how that plays out. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that's you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.